We are in Revelation chapter 9. Here are some basics that I presented last week, and we're going to go into some details. However, last week I gave a few thoughts to support what I'm going to say with few words this week. I would open with 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 11, concerning and in connection with the scorpions and the attitude and the mindset and what John is presenting by the images in chapter 9, verses 1 through verse 11, 12, 13. In 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 11, you may remember that Rehoboam is now the king over the northern kingdom since it has been divided. And he has decided to raise taxes. Well, anyway, he says unto those who are beseeching him, and now whereas my father, that is Solomon, did lay you with a heavy load, in other words, he loaded you down heavily, I will add to your yoke. I'm going to make it heavier than what it was. My father chastised you with whips. Watch this. But I will chastise you with scorpions. I think it is my judgment that we can understand the figure of speech that is being used in 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 11, concerning the scorpions. Then the scorpion locust in Revelation chapter 9 is basically saying the same, putting across the same concept. What Rehoboam is talking about is a harsh response to the children of Israel, rejecting their plea for a lighter burden. Instead of easing their load, he threatens even greater severity. That's what's going on in chapter 9. You may remember that in the first four trumpets, he then switches to the fifth trumpet, which we're now reading in chapter 9. And he also calls it a woe. It's the first woe. So the trumpet is a warning, as we found out. But along with that warning, he says it's going to get worse. And so this verse indicates the greater severity that they're going to have to go through. And it is symbolically escalating as it goes. And he's now giving a vivid metaphor for an intensified oppression. And in this case, it is the Roman government that is oppressing the children of Israel, the Israelites in the land of Judah. We discussed a lot of that in chapter 8 concerning the specific location as to where the warnings were going to go to. Now, there are two things that make me think that John does not mean the locusts literally. He is using it as a figure of speech. Unlike locusts, they do not hurt the vegetation. It is said, don't hurt the vegetation. Furthermore, unlike locusts, unlike locusts, they have no king in the text. Pardon me. Unlike locusts, in the text, they have a king. Locusts do not have a king. There are two facts from the text that lead me to believe the symbolism of the locusts is not an invading army in the first part of what he's saying. For instance, in Revelation 9, verse 4, we called your attention to that verse last week. And he says that it was said unto them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing nor any tree. And then he explains what he means by that, which is a fortification, a verification of what he had said concerning the green in earlier chapters. He says, but only such men as have not the seal of God on the foreheads. Thus, it's limited. The hurt that's coming from the locust is limited. It cannot be an army. Furthermore, in chapter 9, verse 5 and 6, He's telling you it's not an army because no one's going to die from what this particular trumpet is all about. Noticing in verse 5, and was given unto them that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. By the way, I don't think I mentioned the 5 months is basically the life of a locust. It's how long he lives. Verse 6 says, and verifies that same concept, and in those days men shall seek death. Well, if they are seeking death, they're not dying. If they're not dying, it's not an army. As I called your attention last week, a famous nationwide radio celebrity said armies are to kill and to destroy. That's why you have armies. Well, here in this text concerning the locusts, they are not to kill. That takes it out of being an army to kill. Now, certainly an army could do things that are oppressive. A government can do things that's oppressive, severely so, and they can increase that oppression and leave you with a particular mindset or attitude or feeling. And we were repressing the point of the feeling. Here's why I would press the point concerning the feeling. Nothing is going to, in this particular case, be addressed to Christians. It's addressed to, pardon me, it is and has to do with non-Christians. So you have two sets, the godly and the ungodly. The godly are not going to be hurt. They're not going to die. The ungodly are going to be hurt, and they're not going to die. Now, what you have to ask yourself is, in the context, are the locusts discussing the demon world? Are the locusts calling attention to God is going to release from the pits of hell those demons and evil spirits and the evil angels that are always fighting with Christians and children of God and the world? That seems to be what most commentators think that the bottomless pit is all about. I do not. Before we leave this concept and we deal with the abyss, look at chapter 9, verse 3. And out of the smoke came forth locusts upon the earth, and power was given unto them. What kind of power? Well, as the scorpions of earth have power. What do you mean? Look at verse 10. And they have tails like scorpions, and stings in their tails is their power to hurt men 5 months. That's basically the point that John is making, that the scorpions would be extremely oppressive mentally. That's the only thing you can think of that would be hurtful to one group of people and not to others. I think I've got time, so I'm going to do this. Look at chapter 9, verse 7. And then we'll go back to verse 1, the abyss. In chapter 9, verse 7, as he goes through, he's going to give you a variety of symbolic analogies that is depicting what the locusts are. And I think everybody would like to know what he's talking about. So we shall very quickly go through this particular part. Verse 7, 8, 9, 10, you have the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, their heads as it were crowns like unto gold. We'll come back to it. Their faces were as men's faces. They had hair as the hair of women. Their teeth were as the teeth of lions. They had breastplates, as it were, breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses rushing to war. And they have as their tails like unto scorpions, and stings. The as is like unto. So he's drawing a parallel, an analogy between those things and what he's trying to picture to the people. It is not locusts. It is not horses. It is not crowns on their heads. It's not faces of men. It's not hair of women. It's not the teeth of lions. It's not the breastplate of iron. It's not the sound. It's not the chariots flying through the air and through the land. And it's not literal scorpions. Well, what is it? It's figure of speech. In figures of speech, you put one thing for another. Well, what does it emphasize? First of all, look at verse 7. The shapes of the locusts were likened to horses. Now, watch this, prepared for war. He didn't say they're like horses. Yes, he did. No, he added to it. Horses prepared for war. Is there any place in the Bible that can tell me the meaning of that? I do think that when you turn to Job 39:19, I think you have the symbolism explained for you. It does me. We'll see if it does for you. So chapter 39, verse 19, and y'all know the context. We're just going to skip right into, do you know, said God to Job, hast thou given the horse his might? Verse 21, he, the horse, paweth in the valley and rejoiceth in his strength. He goeth out to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear. He's not dismayed, neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the flashing spear and the javelin. He goes ahead. He's fearless. That's what John is saying about the locusts. They have no fear. They are just like the horse, prepared for war. Looking now at chapter 9, verse 7 again, he gives a second description and he says, and upon their heads, as it were, crowns like unto gold. Every single time I ask AI what the world thinks about that verse, it answers the same way, even after I correct it. What is that, AI? I asked my buddy. And he says, well, that's royal crowns of gold. No, AI, it's not. The word crown in the text can be one of two words, three as far as that goes, but we're looking at the two. A diadem, which is a crown, a royal crown. It is not a diadem. It is a crown of victory. Whenever they would run the races in the Olympics in the first century, they would be crowned with a wreath, with a garland. That is what he's talking about. They have victory, whoever this is. They have the victory, and it is precious to them. It is like gold to them. Maybe not to others, but it is to them. That's the way I would interpret that. We take notice of the third thing in that same verse. Their faces were as men's faces. I would indicate, I would leave the impression that I am left with the impression that what he's doing is telling us that these, whatever they are intelligent. They're not dumb. Or I can put it in the negative and say, they are not mere dumb insects. They are not mere dumb beasts. The faces of men signals cognitive agency, moral accountability, rational capacity. They are not dumb animals, they're intelligent. Volitional entities. They have a will. They have an intelligence. They can make decisions. Who are they? We have no name specific. We just have, this is the characteristic of the locusts, as John puts images to tell us about them. Verse 8 says, and they had hair as the hair of women. Now, if you were with me a couple of years ago and a couple of years before that and decades ago, you will probably see the word dishonorable. I do believe that's incorrect. It is my thinking that what he's talking about, turn with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, if you would. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. If you want a good study on 1 Corinthians chapter 11, 1 Corinthians chapter 11, thank you. Man, that's 14 mistakes already, and it's just 14 minutes into class. In this particular section, what Paul is doing is discussing the subordination of Christ to the Father, the subordination of men to Christ, the subordination of women to men. We'll not go through the whole thing, but you can see verse 3. I'm going to skip down to verse 10 because I think it's the point that's being made in this text, as well as Revelation chapter 9 concerning hair as women. For this cause ought the woman to have a sign of authority on her head, because of the angels. What is that sign of authority? You continue reading, and it says, doth not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a dishonor to him, but if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her? So is John, and I think he is, using the image of women with long hair to indicate subordination. These locusts, scorpions, whoever they are, causing the problems and the oppression, they are in subordination, not insubordination. They are in subordination. They are submissive to another. You may also notice as you look, you will see verse 11. They have over them as king the angel of the abyss, the destroyer. Just to let you know, I think the destroyer is Rome, Nero, Titus, Vespasian. However, they were not only over the army, they were over all of Rome, and they were causing Israel problems before 70 AD. They were causing Israel problems in 67 AD, 68 AD, and sooner, earlier. So the hair of women would be emphasizing the subordination of this group, the locusts. You will take notice in verse 8 that he says their teeth were as the teeth of lions. It seems to me like we understand the teeth of lions would be that which would be extremely destructive, devouring. In verse 9, they had breastplates, but he continues, as it were breastplates of iron. They're not just breastplates. Sometimes whenever you see various movies that are depicting battles in the early times with the Romans and others, they will take notice that some of the enemy, some of those not Rome, will not even have a breastplate, or their breastplate will be of animal skin, or their breastplate will be of leather. Same thing. Well, here the breastplate is of iron. Invincibility. Invincibility. They are not vulnerable. Verse 9, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, as of many horses rushing to war. When you are waiting on battle, it's terrifying. And whenever you have a rush of horses back in that time, I remember we were right outside the gates of Jerusalem just before Titus marched against Israel. And we, time and time again, would hear the horses running around and the chariots running around. It was frightening. It was terrifying. Well, that's the characteristic of these locusts. Now, when you get through with all of those descriptions, and you've read it as a Christian, well, the non-Christian is not necessarily going to read it. He doesn't care about it. What are you going to do? You're going to look at those around you who are going to reap the consequences of their ungodliness. Earlier parts of Revelation, Revelation chapter 6, Revelation chapter 7, Revelation chapter 8, Matthew 13, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, Deuteronomy 28. We've gone over all of that. Then you recognize there's a bad day coming for Israel. And what John has done in chapter 8 and chapter 9, he has elevated the intensity of what's going to occur. And right now, with the fifth trumpet, it is elevated to such a terrifying point, terrifying situation, that it can best be described by the scorpions that Rehoboam would reap upon God's people, upon his people in his day. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Seriously? So it is not the army itself marching against Jerusalem to destroy Jerusalem. Yes, it has to do with the Roman government. Yes, it has to do with the servants of the Roman government coming down hard upon the children of Israel in the land of Israel. Okay, we do have enough time, so let's go back to Revelation chapter 9. Looking at verse 1. If you read it before I do, that'll be helpful. I've got papers everywhere. No, it's printed. I just had buried it. I just buried it. She says, "Did you forget to print it off?" I've got 14,000 pages up here. I've got a book. Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. The fifth angel sounded, which is the first woe. And I saw a star from heaven falling unto the earth. And there was given unto him, there was allowed unto him, the key of the pit of the abyss, the bottomless pit. And he opened the pit of the abyss. Smoke came forth out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And out of the smoke came forth locusts upon the earth. You will take notice that he mentions a number of times the pit, the bottomless pit, the abyss, and you may be using different versions to come out with the same thing. So what I want to do is go a little bit deeper with the idea of this pit, this bottomless pit. What is it? I find it quite disturbing, if you please, for the various commentators to conclude some erroneous concepts, and it leaves those erroneous concepts with folks, and they are kind of wondering what's going on with what God is doing here on this earth. So the word itself, whether you're talking about the Hebrew and the Hebrew word being in the Septuagint being exchanged for the Greek word, abuso, abyss. So we'll use abyss from now on. You know I'm talking about the same word. Turn with me, first of all, to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and you get a good idea of what the word in the original language, Greek, basically means. Now, very quickly, let me say this. Words have not only the literal meaning, but words have the figurative meaning. And you have to figure out what the figurative meaning is within the context of what someone's saying. But the literal words are basically always true, except for the fact that you have a living language that will change. Those are a couple of principles. I'm not going to go into them, but they help us to see some things. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep. The deep is our word, abyss, bottomless pit. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Is this hell? No. Is this the grave? No. Is this the place where demons roam around? No. Are fallen angels here? No. It's just in the beginning, God moved upon the deep. Turn with me to Genesis 7, verse 11. We will see the basis of the meaning. Genesis 7, verse 11, and all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. The word deep, the subterranean world, where the water came from during the flood. Whew. Easy for you to say. Again, we would go through the rift. It's not hell. It's not Sheol. It's not the grave. It's not a place for demons. It's simply using the idea of the abyss, the deep. Why? Because it's deep. Turn with me to the New Testament, Romans 10, verse 7. Paul would ask the question, and it would be from Deuteronomy. Romans 10, 7. Who shall descend into the abyss? That is to bring Christ up from the dead. What's the abyss as you compare the wording within it? Well, listen closely. It's the deep. But now he has used it in a special way, and he's given you the definition of using it in a special way. This deep, like the deep sea and like the deep of the world that was created, it's still deep. It's still bottomless. But this time he says the dead are there. The dead. Which dead? He doesn't go into all of that. We can go into the context. Now take a look with me in Luke chapter 8, verse 31. Luke 8:31. While you're turning to Luke 8:31, I'm going to reemphasize the point that a word has a basic meaning, its literal meaning. A word can have a figurative meaning, and you have to look in the context as to what that figurative meaning is. We're in Luke chapter 8, verse 31, and they entreated the Lord not to command them to depart into the abyss. Well, obviously, that has to be hell. No, it does not. It just means the deep. That's all it means. And he hasn't given you enough information to let you know what deep they're talking about. You ought to hear some of the explanations. That is a crucial point in biblical studies. While commentators must define the abyss in Revelation 9 primarily as a prison for demons to make sense of the text, this specific meaning is not its universal or primary definition in the Greek Old Testament. Their definition as the bottomless pit and prison is an evolution of the term that occurred between the Old and New Testament. Do what? This commentator is saying, look, what you had when you looked into the Old Testament was the meaning of the word, deep. But that word has evolved, and here's the part that is not good. And it evolved from the intertestamental time frame. What's that? Malachi wrote in about 444 BC. The New Testament was written 4850 AD. And before the New Testament came along, there was the life of the Jews, and there were certain things that happened among the Jews, and the word abyss grew to mean something other than the deep. It grew to where when you read what's this? The Apocrypha, the false writings of the intertestamental time frame, when they tell you what it is, they tell you it's the place of demons. It's the prison of demons. Therefore, every commentator that you ever read, almost, in Revelation chapter 9, conclude that John is talking about the prison of demons, and the locusts are demons, supernatural beings, spiritual demons that are being let loose out of this dark place to inundate the earth. Seriously? During the centuries between the two testaments, Jewish apocalyptic literature like First Enoch and Jubilees, you've never heard of them, almost, expanded the concept of abyss. It transformed from a natural, watery chaos into a supernatural place of confinement. It became viewed as the dungeon where rebellious, fallen angels and evil spirits were bound until the final judgment. Who viewed it that way? You had no right to view it that way, says Ron. Well, who says it shouldn't be viewed that way? I just did. And you have to look at the text of Revelation 9, and you have to conclude, is it talking about supernatural beings, locusts, supernatural beings, spiritual beings coming forth upon the earth by the command of God, by his power? Or is it of the earth, natural? I'm bending over backwards to say it's natural and not, absolutely not supernatural. We continue on with the basic meaning of abyss. 5 theories of the abyss in Revelation chapter 9. The demonic prison theory views it. The abyss is a literal holding cell for fallen angels or demonic entities. No, it's not. The locusts are, and here's the support. The locusts are described as unnatural, tormenting beings. Luke 8:31 shows demons fear being cast into the abyss. Luke 8:31 shows that the demons, true, the evil spirits, did not want to go to the abyss. But it nowhere in that text says the abyss is the way they're describing it where fallen angels are. It's just the deep. There's the one I think it is. So we'll come back to that. Number two, the abyss is a portal to Sheol or hell, the realm of the dead or damned. Support. The bottomless pit evokes ancient cosmological space of layered realms beneath the earth. Revelation 9 marks a breach between the living world and the realm of the dead. No, it doesn't. Your imagination is running away with you. There is a dimensional rift. The abyss is a sealed dimension or altered realm or universe, possibly tied to the giants or the hybrid entities that we read about in Genesis. No, it's not. What do you think of this one? The abyss represents the eruption of chaos, spiritual deception, or societal collapse. Yes. Yes. It's nice to see somebody get it right, says wrong. Arrogant snot. We shall start right there next week. No, I'm not. I'm going to say some more. Some important keys. The abyss. Those that come out of the abyss have a selective targeting. Revelation 9:4. Do not touch the sealed. Revelation 9:5. It is torment without death. What can torment you and hurt you and it not be death? Mental, the burden of life, societal issue. Right now, the United States is in an uproar. It is in an absolute uproar, especially in the East Coast and the West Coast. Last of all, we read Revelation 9:20. These are principles, I think, that need to stand out. The rest of mankind who were not killed with these plagues repented not of the works of their hands. Revelation 9:21. They repented not of their murders, nor their sorceries, nor the fornication, nor of thefts. Revelation 9 and the locusts would be the terrible mental problems that were brought on in the first century, where they would cry out in the first century. Josephus even says this, that the miseries were so bad, they wanted to die. They wanted to die because of the miseries they were going through. Well, in the next trumpet, we get to see the army come. Revelation 11. Read the whole book. Thanks, Ron. Are there any questions or anything you'd like to add to what I said? When I say add to what I said, that you're going to say, I agree with you, Ron, and here's why.